is the great white shark, also known as the king of the sea, as I put it there. And this is a dolphin, and it is considered considered to be one of the smartest mammals on Earth, tied with like humans, as it is as smart, if not smarter than some humans. And this is an orca, and it is at the top of the food chain when it comes to underwater organisms. So it is something that most people and organisms fear. And these three organisms that I just listed. These are pretty cool. Like, I think they're interesting. Most people do consider them to be interesting, like one of their more favorite underwater creatures. But what people do is they fail to recognize the narwhal, because the narwhal is, in my opinion, the best thing to exist, because it is known as the unicorn of the sea, and its genus and species is Monodon monoceros. And so I'm going to give my presentation on narwhals and teach you about them, basically. And by the end of my presentation, not only do I want you to be as acknowledged as I am in this topic, but also to be as glad as I am that narwhals exist. So, because I take this very seriously, I made a schedule of like what I'm going to go over. So I'm going to go over the unique skills of narwhals, their anatomy as a creature, the habitat that they live in, and the kind of food that they eat, and how they reproduce. So as Ronald M. Nowak stated in his book Walker's Mammals of the World, Volume 2, narwhals are highly intelligent creatures because they have a high brain-to-body mass ratio, and they're second only to humans in that regard. And they also communicate and navigate underwater using echolocation. And I know you might be wondering, well, dolphins are also really smart, and they can also use echolocation, so why are they not on the same level as narwhals? But I would argue that narwhals have a larger range of sonar waves, which means that they can echolocate more precisely, giving them better directional and navigational capabilities. And so now I'm going to go over the anatomy of a narwhal. It might be a little hard to see, but at the tail end of the narwhal, there are flukes which help propel the narwhal when it's trying to swim underwater. And there are the flippers, or the fins, which help it steer while swimming underwater. And there's also some spots on its back that develop as it grows, so based on the number of spots on a narwhal's back, you can tell how old it is. And there's also a blowhole on the top, like most whales, which help it breathe. And narwhals can go up to 20 minutes underwater without air. And of course, the most interesting part is the tusk, which is a spiral tusk. It's also its tooth and a horn. And it grows out of the narwhal in a counterclockwise spiral. And I'm going to go a little deeper into what the tusk is. So here's a photo taken from a research study conducted in 2012 by Martin Muila and his colleagues. And so basically for narwhals, all narwhals have two tusks, or two teeth, or two horns per se. In females, it never leaves their skull, it stays inside the head. But in males, the left tusk protrudes out of the body as the male narwhal grows. So as you can see there, you can see a horn coming out, and that's the horn of the male narwhal. And this, the horns can grow to be up to like 9 feet tall, which is pretty amazing. And the purpose of having a horn hasn't really been discovered, but I'm going to go over that a little later. So here I'm going to talk about the habitat. So narwhals tend to live in areas closer to the North Pole, so like northern Canada, Greenland, Norway, and Russia. These are the more cold and Arctic seas. And an interesting part about this is that in Greenland there's a term called savsat, which basically just means being trapped in forming ice, which means like you're like in a place and then the ice forms around you, you get stuck in the ice, kind of like in the movies, like, what was it, Han Solo and Captain America, like that. But, so according to T.A. Jefferson, in his 2015 article, Marine Mammals of the World, he found that over 1,000 narwhals died due to being trapped in forming ice, which is just savsat, which was pretty sad, but it was interesting nonetheless. And I also made a graphic depiction in case you didn't understand what I was talking about. But so for the food that they eat, according to the Encyclopedia of Marine Animals written by Perrin in 2002, narwhals' diets consist mainly of Arctic cod, squid, flatfish, pelagic shrimp, and cephalopods. And cephalopods are just like different types of octopi and squids. And on the right, you can see that is the inside of the mouth of a narwhal. And according to the same source, narwhals, since they don't have teeth inside their mouths, what they do is they create a vacuum, like they just suck with their mouths like a vacuum, and they just digest the fish or whatever they're eating just by sucking them, which is, I wish I could do that. So for now, like the interesting part, reproduction. So something that's cool is that no one really knows what they do to reproduce. Like, if you were to talk about like humans, like you guys know, yeah. And but like researchers and researchers and like scientists haven't really been able to go underwater and like actually witness narwhals mating. So that nobody really knows what they do. There are like speculations that they like rub their bellies together, but it's not a joke. It's like actually, like scientists do believe that. But what we do know is that according to Heidi Jorgensen, which I think I'm saying it right, I'm going to put the spelling up just in case, yeah. And who's the author of Greenland's Winter Whales, written in 2006. They found that female narwhals, they reach sexual maturity between the ages 4 to 7, and then male narwhals reach their sexual maturity in the ages 8 to 9. And so they mate, if narwhals ever do mate, they mate during the month of April, and then the following July, or 15 months later, the female births a calf. And females can only give birth every 3 years, like that's their ability. So you might be wondering, I said I'd come back to this, but why the horn? So the interesting thing about the horn is that it's not used for anything really. It's not used in hunting, it's not used in mating, and it doesn't really give any use, because if it was useful, then female narwhals would have less survivability rates than male narwhals, which is not the case. Female narwhals have the same survivability rate as male narwhals. So the horn doesn't really give them an advantage. However, scientists do speculate that since the horn is a tooth, and teeth have multiple nerve endings and like sensory mechanisms, that narwhals can sense like chemical concentrations underwater. So like if there's more salt in an area of water, they can avoid it by sensing it with their tusk. However, this is pretty cool because it implies that it needs more research, and I feel like this is something that we can all work on. Like me teaching you is just one method of learning, but like actively learning by like having an opportunity to do something is pretty useful, in my opinion. So the next time that you're talking to someone and you're like having a friendly conversation, and they try and step up to you by mentioning one of these animals or anything else to say that they're cool or interesting, you can just bring up the narwhal and say that they're better, because they are, and you have all the information to do that, because I taught you good. Thank you.
Socket, how did that go?
Good, yeah. I got a little, like, I wasn't nervous at the beginning, and then I got like nervous in the middle, and I don't know what to make of it, so I just kept going.
Okay. The best thing to do, just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything that you would attribute the nervousness to?
I don't know. I don't know.
And you might know, and you don't have to say it out loud if it's something. All right. Audience, if you could please offer some feedback.
Yeah.
I thought your intro was super funny, and even though you did get nervous, that really didn't come off to the audience, and you seemed super confident the whole time.
I like your choice of topic. It was really interesting.
I was like changing topics a little bit, and I decided I'll just go with something I'm passionate about, because then it's going to be easier for me to talk about it. So, yeah.
I don't know if this is intentional, but like you say stuff that's funny, but you have no like emotion towards it. So we're laughing, but you're just like up there like, yeah, And then I think that's a great way of presenting.
I was kind of serious about time. I don't want to laugh and lose time.
I just thought it was really clever the way you structured your speech and used the concept. It was great.
I put a lot of time into it.
Okay. Socket. Thank you for sharing. I've now heard about Narwhals twice in a week, which
Wait, really?
yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. I thought
Yeah.
that was the only one.
Do you like them now? That's the question. Like, what's your perspective on them now that you've heard about them?
Well, my other student gave a speech on dolphins, and the narwhal came up because they're part of the same family.
Oh yeah.
So it was in passing. I learned way more about narwhals from you than I did. Just so you know.
Cool.
You're the standout. Okay, Socket, you know, here's something here to comment on. First of all, you brought your personality with you, and you have sort of a dry sense of humor, and that came through. And I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that with us. It was fun, especially given the topic and how you were able to thread that through. And one of the ways that you did it was you would make personal comments about, as you were talking about something, you would say, well, and I think this is cool, right? You know, so I
want to like sound as convincing as possible without making it seem like a persuasive speech. But
Yeah.
I want to like employ my own opinions too, because like it's important to me.
Yeah. So you peppered that in, and it just. It made it more conversational coming across, but it also added in just a lightheartedness to it, and not that the topic is unimportant, but just being able to kind of go along on the ride with you as you share the information. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. I would say no need to keep articulate your specific purpose statement in your speech. You can keep that out. It might be inferred as you talk about. Lay out your introduction, but you don't need to necessarily say that out loud. It's more for you in terms of writing it. Okay? You definitely clearly identified what you were going to be talking about in the body of your speech. I might have organized it just a little bit differently in terms of maybe doing sort of habitat food and then sort of the interesting things about it, as opposed to starting with interesting things and then the food habitat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it might have just had a little better flow to it. Would be a suggestion for you there. I heard you come back. Before I go there, I thought in terms of your transitions, you made clear when you were going to be moving that they were a little abrupt. So just smooth those out as you continue on. The slide on the anatomy of the narwhal, that was a little hard to read from back here.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to be like that. I felt like it was more clear in my.
Yeah.
Actually, no. It's just the font. I used like a Google image. I probably should have just written it myself. Like, that's my fault. Yeah.
Yeah. No. You don't know until you see. So that would be my one suggestion with regards to your visual aid. That particular one was a little hard to read. I also appreciated that when you were talking about the tusk, you actually kind of got a close up on that, and I appreciated that. I thought that was a nice way to incorporate that in your speech. A little bit of filler language, but your conversational quality is coming along quite lovely, and your eye contact was actually rather good. And you mentioned that you got nervous. It wasn't, midway through it, it wasn't very noticeable.
Really? I'm just gonna stop. That's good.
Yeah, it didn't come across. Maybe that's when you started using more filler language, and that's what I picked up on. All right. Thank you. Maddie, you're on.